Hello, Professor Monteleone. I'm going to be making my video here comparing and contrasting the two David sculptures, one by Donatello and the other by Michelangelo. Tried to get them both on the screen there. So when I was doing my research into this, the first thing that really stood out to me, like the stark contrast between them, was not just by how they looked, but how Donatello's David was actually looked at as more of like a private venture compared to Michelangelo's, because Donatello's David was paid for by a very rich family, the Medici family. It was commissioned by them, and it was meant to stand in their Medici palace. So it was more private, it wasn't really meant to be shown to the public. In comparison to Michelangelo's David, it was paid for by the Florentine Republic, and it actually stood outside of the city hall. So that was really the first thing that I looked at. And just moving on to the more obvious comparison, Donatello's medium used was bronze, and the medium used for Michelangelo's is marble. I know it looks like they're both relatively the same height in this, but that's another huge comparison. Donatello's David is life-sized. It's meant to be like the same size as a human being. But Michelangelo's actually stands 17 feet tall, which is just remarkable to me. I know it's standing like kind of on that pedestal in a way, but it's still 17 feet tall. It's almost like more biblical or more like godlike compared to the like life-sized David sculpture that Donatello did. So getting into the iconography, this was some more research that I did, but I can also just tell based off of Donatello's that he's carrying a sword. Goliath's head is at his feet. So this is post the battle that David had with Goliath. In comparison to Michelangelo's, you don't see any head at the bottom of his feet. He's not carrying a sword or anything like that. So, and you can also tell that he's looking on to Goliath, his opponent. So this is looked at as before battle. So that's another difference in their iconography. So the next thing I want to talk about is the anatomy and kind of how that ties into the texture as well. So I guess I'll start with the texture, which kind of also goes in with the medium as well. So the fact that they use bronze for Donatello's, it's like you can't really see any veins. The musculature is not as profound. It kind of looks more smooth. I feel like David looks a little bit more dainty in Donatello's sculpture. Like there's no visible veins, no musculature, which ties into the texture. It's more smooth looking. Obviously it's metallic because it's bronze. And the other difference that you see is the hat that David is wearing in Donatello's sculpture as well. In comparison to Michelangelo, who is known for his interest in anatomy and how, you just take a look at that sculpture, it looks real. Like those muscles, they look real. They're completely accurate. He has veins protruding out of the forearm. It's like abdomen, his bicep muscle, his tricep, his shoulder, they all look real. And that kind of plays in with the texture as well for the marble. It's more defined looking. It just looks more realistic to me. There's a couple comparisons. The obvious one being that symbolically they both depict the biblical hero David. That's pretty obvious. But the other one that you see is they both use the contrapposto, I believe is how you say that, where their weight is actually more on that right leg. And it makes it look more real in comparison maybe to like Cretia's boy, how he's just like standing up straight, or like those older Renaissance sculptures where they're just standing up straight, in comparison to like how that knee is bent, how this knee is bent in the both of them. The majority of the weight is on that right side. It just looks more realistic. That's kind of my thought. But at the end of the day, I think they're both beautiful sculptures. The more interesting thing I thought is how this one is more private compared to how this one was shown more public by the Florentine Republic. But yeah, that's all I got. All right, hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.